I wasn't expecting that. Hence no makeup, nothing.
Quite all right. And you can view this in side-by-side gallery mode if you like, or with the speaker featured when we get started. So I just want to warmly welcome you all today. Have fun in this Zoom meeting. You can use the chat, raise hand, react at any time. Use just be able to interact today, but please kindly mute during our speaker portion. So thank you so much. And we acknowledge the traditional custodians of the place we're meeting, the Hul'qumi'num speaking peoples who hunted and gathered in this area. We respect their caring connections to each other in the places where we live, work, and play. So just a few announcements. We grow vibrant leaders. Vibrant meaning volunteers who are interested in becoming Rotarians who achieve new things. There's an acronym for you. And membership is open to anyone who has an interest in community service. So this is our inaugural club meeting, and we're looking for people who want to make a positive difference in their environment for just $5 a week. So we have more information at our website, including our member benefits. Okay, I'll advance this way. So our EcoAction is related to today's topic. It's a clean where you are. So it's going to be happening from Earth Day, April 22nd to Saturday, April 24th. And I'll let this play as you read it just very quickly. We have this all posted at our website, of course, but the hashtag for sharing on social media is TLC Shawnigan 2021. And there's some inspiration for you. And we also have a number of Rotary youth who are doing a prize challenge. So that is something that you can participate in all month. And it's done through Instagram. Follow Vancouver Island Eco Restoration for more info. And here's some of our local groups, including the Cowichan Valley Cleanup Effort. And they will inspire us, hopefully, after today and beyond. Lastly, we have the Shawnigan Basin Society is offering a forest walk, and the slides are getting ahead of me, on May 1st, and you can visit them at their website to sign up for that. And we have Ed Weeb, the guide for this walk, on our call today. So Ed, if you'd like to just say a quick hello and pump us up for this, go for it.
Okay, I'm unmuted now, I guess. Yes, excuse me. I will be doing a walk to the ancient forest. It's a beautiful stand of big trees and in a nice little valley right close to the Coxella River. The reason we're trying to highlight it now is there's logging going on very close to it. And the company has actually said that they're going to keep that ancient forest intact. So it's in the highlight right now. And right now I'm taking names that, well, I have already have 10 people signed up for May the 1st. Unfortunately, I don't know what the COVID situation is going to be like. So it may or may not happen May the 1st, but we'll leave it on the books, and whenever we can do it, we'll do the walk, the tour, and I've been taking more names after the first walk, if anybody else is interested beyond
Great.
that.
Thank you so much, Ed. I really appreciate that. And once again, you can read all of this tiny print. Will be available at the website for the Shawnigan Basin Society. Our next meeting is in 2 weeks, Saturday, April 24th, and that's during our cleanup. So I will stop the screen share here, but I just want to again highlight and introduce our guest speaker, David. Oh, David, you're going to have to say your last name again.
Boudinot.
Boudinot, thank you. We're so glad to have you today, and our topic is Litter Heroes. I would just like to also frame this in the context of Rotary's four-way test, which we'll share at each and every meeting. Of the things that we think, say, and do, we ask ourselves, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? And I can say without reservation that this litter hero and all of you out there picking up other people's junk are definitely passing the four-way test. So let's all please welcome David Boudinot.
Thank you.
I will stop my screen sharing now, David, so we can focus on your message.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me. I wanted to share kind of my story of how I came to be picking up litter in the Victoria area, in the neighborhood of Fernwood, and you know, talk about my journey of health of myself, health of the planet, the impact that's had on me, but more importantly, the impact it's had on others, and how just doing kind of a simple act can have a far-reaching impact, not only in my own community, but communities literally around the world, which has been really inspiring. But before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge with respect that I'm calling in today from the traditional territories of the Shawnigan peoples, the Songhees, the Esquimalt, here in Fernwood. And they are the traditional stewards of this land. And it is an honor to be able to live in these lands and to continue to be a steward alongside them. You know, these on the streets of Victoria that haven't always been streets. So it's important to think of the history of the land of where we're from. I'm originally from Washington State, which is the lands, or in the area I grew up in Skagit Valley, or the lands of the Upper Skagit, the Swinomish, the Lummi, and they're were bound by the Treaty of Point Elliott. And one of the parts of the treaty said that the Native Americans in that area were not allowed to trade with Vancouver Island. So there's a history of this land that crosses borders, which focuses on the resources and the importance of the land. So just to kind of put things into context. A year ago, as many of you probably share this experience, we had the pandemic shutdown, and a lot of us started working from home. And so it was about June, maybe May or June last year, where I was sitting at my dining room table feeling kind of gross and unhealthy. And I was like, I'm not doing anything different, really. I'm actually eating better. What's the difference? I just don't feel right. And I realized the difference was walking. Like when I was at work, I was walking a lot upstairs. I work at the University of Victoria in the library, and I was walking across campus to the bus. And what was absent from my life was walking. And so I decided I'm going to start getting up early and going on walks in my neighborhood. And at first I decided to start walking as far as I could for, say, an hour. So an hour out, an hour back. And along the way, I started noticing trash. I was like, well, I have a bucket like this, and I can bring that along, and I have some gloves, right? And I'll just pick up trash. And it was kind of staggering the amount of trash I started picking up. And by December, I decided, you know what, I'm going to actually challenge myself, and I want to pick up litter on every single street in my neighborhood. And so December 13th, I started. And this is a map of Fernwood, and all the highlighted areas are streets that I've walked now. Some of the streets I've walked many times, because in order to get over here from where I live, you have to kind of go back and forth. But So since December 13th, I have now picked up 1,170 liters of trash. And, you know, I don't really need any recognition on this, but I wanted to share with other people what I'm finding and share the, you know, the updates of my project. Partly is an accountability kind of mechanism. Like, I want to finish this, and I want other people to keep me accountable to make sure that I do finish it. And one way to do that is do it publicly. To announce everybody, I have this challenge for myself, so that I actually do go through and finish it. And now that I'm so close, like, I'm even more determined to finish it. And so I started posting on Twitter what I was finding, and people noticed. And I got a flurry of press. I was on TV, radio, newspaper, online newsletters, all kind of in January, and a couple of articles recently. And it took off like crazy beyond, you know, my wildest imagination. I didn't realize that, well, I guess they do say trash does sell sometimes, but I think what's neat is it's a story of hope and inspiration, and it's something simple that has a big impact that others can, you know, be inspired by, and it's accessible, and it's kind of a good news story in a time of so much despair and negativity in the world. And I wanted to share some of kind of my thoughts as I'm picking up the litter, and there'll be plenty of time for discussion and questions. But one of those is that we're more tied to the earth than we realize. When you pollute your body, you're polluting the earth. And when I go and pick up litter, I see evidence of people polluting their bodies, especially with cigarette butts. You can go in any neighborhood in, well, I would say anywhere really, and the street looks clean. But when you really start to look, there are cigarette butts everywhere. The world is literally an ashtray. And all those cigarette butts are made out of plastic, and they break down into fibers. And when it rains, they go down the drain, and then they end up in our waters. And then marine life are eating them. And then we're eating the fish that come out of the water, and it's just not good. So, you know, I've heard from people like, you're one person doing just a little bit of pickup. There's so much of it, it's never gonna stop. Like, why even start? It's just depressing to even think about. And I like to flip that on its head. Yes, the problems, environmental issues in our world seem insurmountable. But there's kind of like, you have two choices in my mind. You can either do nothing, which a lot of us do, continue on, kind of ignore the problem, or you can do something. You can try your best. That's all you can do. And I choose to do something, and it's making an impact. And then other people see that behavior, and it kind of normalizes it. And all of a sudden, it's not just me that's picking up litter. I've heard from dozens of people that are now going out, that are picking up litter that didn't before. And they're having fun doing it. And that's another reason that I do it. I find it fun. I don't know if others enjoy getting out and cleaning up, but there is a sense of satisfaction at making the environment cleaner, but also in some cases safer. And by taking care of the earth, it takes care of us. And that's just a really good feeling. I want to pause there for a second and just hear from you and see if you have any observations about the litter issues in your communities. Because I think, you know, in Fernwood, the litter issues are similar, but a little bit different than what you might be finding. And then we can talk about kind of the gear, and I have some recommendations of what I use. Yeah.
I just have a question. Do you think the takeaway packaging is worse now, or like, are you finding other types of new litter that you didn't see before?
Yeah, there is quite a bit of the takeaway packaging. And you know what's funny is that you see some of the greenwashing that happens with products. It's like, oh, but this is like a compostable container. Well, guess what? People are still littering paper straws, for example.
Well,
like,
you know,
that doesn't prevent littering.
what's actually funny is I went into a Tim Hortons and they have two signs up right next to each other, right in the front. And the one on the said goodbye plastic straws. And it's like, we've reduced 300 million plastic straws this year by switching over to paper. And the sign right next to it, it says, sorry, at this time, we do not accept reusable cups. Two posters right next to each other, one with bright green text and the one right next to it saying, no, you still have to use our single-use disposable cups. And I just found that so funny. And it's like the same thing, like I work for Parks and Recreation within the district of Saanich. And I don't ever like speaking negatively about it, but like, it's a good organization and whatnot. But we have the same garbage trucks that do the same routes, but now they all say sustainable Saanich, greener Saanich, and they've been vinyl wrapped green. And like, I know about vinyl wrapping and decorating and stuff, and vinyl wrapping creates a significant amount of waste. So I was like, so you just wrapped the same garbage trucks, creating more waste, but now it says we're doing something greener, but nothing's changed. You just put a logo on the side of the truck. And I found stuff like that kind of ironic. And the same thing too, like with what you were saying with cigarette butts, like I was just kind of like looking up some more information and stuff on that. It says every year smokers burn through 5.5 trillion cigarettes a year throughout the world. And that is a ridiculous number. That's not even fathomable. And it takes 18 to 10 years for it to break down, but it breaks down into microplastics. So it's just polluting in the sense of that you can't even clean it up anymore now. And I think that's a big thing. Like too, I've been making phone calls throughout our local municipal government and stuff and talking. I talked to a guy, Graham, and he was saying, well, he's like, well, even like, you know, the yard waste thing, people don't understand how bad that dumping is, because he's like, well, that's how invasive species and stuff starts. And I could even agree that, like, I just went through Old Mill Park, and the English ivy overgrowth in the park it's like 90% of the vegetation in the park, and it's crawling up the trees and stuff. And that's all been, you know, introduced invasive species. And so I you know, it starts making you, like, I don't know, feel like a little pit in your stomach, because I'm like, I'm focusing on litter, and then I'm realizing that there's even bigger fish to fry, absolutely, in every single way. And that's a thing too. It's like, because it's not even just about cleaning up, it's about nature restoration and stuff. Because like, especially on the island, you know, Scotch broom, actually the big blackberry vines, like the big blackberry bushes, those are invasive. And then
morning glory.
Yeah, and because I didn't know this until funny, I learned this in preschool. But our natural blackberry, or the little twisty vines, the ones that you hate the most, that get caught up in your ankles or something when you're walking through the forest, not the big bushes. Ours are the ones that creep along the ground. And the whole time I remember when I first moved to the island, I was so excited about how many blackberries there were. And I was like, man, there's whole islands where it's just bushes of blackberries and this and that. And there's nothing else here. And I'm like, that's awesome. And then I realized it's like, oh no, that's an invasive species. There's no other natural vegetation going around here, because it's completely taking over. And it is a bit of a hollowing feeling, because you're like, man, we're fighting such an uphill battle, right? And you know, every time you clean up one thing, 10 more things got made. But if you get enough people in the mindset over time, then that's when the pendulum shifts. And that was the biggest thing. Like, I started doing cleanups, it was me and two buddies, And then it was me and 10 people, and then it's me and 14, 15 people. And obviously we've had to split it up and be in small scale little pods with COVID and whatnot. But it is just, it's heartbreaking because it's like, I was even out doing a cleanup in between where Massachi Lake and Port Renfrew is. So there's nothing out there, and there's just like single-use face masks everywhere.
Yeah,
And I'm like, where did you just go? Where did you need this mask? I'm like, there is nothing for 100 kilometers that way. Why did the mask need to find its resting place here? And I agree, the things you find is crazy. And we always do a thing whenever we do cleanups, and it's whoever finds the weirdest thing, I let them pick one thing off the website for free, and it always kind of makes a game of it. We've like found like little collectors boats and like really weird things, and it's always, and like especially Oceanside, it's one shoe. It's never a pair of shoes. You always find one shoe. You find 30 singular shoes. And I've always wanted to find a full pair of shoes. I only ever find one, and I'm always looking for the other.
That's so on point. When you mention the Tim Hortons with the signage about not being able to use a reusable cup, there are health policies around that, which inform or impact environmental things. So if we want to get that rule changed, and also there's confusion around what the policy is. I know some grocery stores won't refill, or they will, like you go to the deli, they won't put something into your container that you bring. They have to use a fresh one because it's their store policy. But then if you go and look at what the Island Health policy is on that, it may be different, or it might be in line with that. So there are all these interpretations. So one of the things that I like to encourage people to do is get involved politically in whatever way you're comfortable. And that could just be writing letters. It could be talking to politicians. It could be running for office yourself. And to start to really look at these policies and how to make them more common sense. And it's crazy. But yeah, the masks. We're finding, that's one thing we're finding a lot of is the masks.
Which it's disappointing because you're like, it's such an easily avoidable waste. Like, just have reusable masks, wash them every time you have one, have 5 or 6, and just keep using the same ones. And but again too, it is an uphill battle, and that's the thing with policy too. It's like, I completely agree. It's like we have to follow health orders and stuff, but it's just ironic because like I've been to Starbucks and they've been like, can you at least just like air pour it into the cup? And they're like, no. And then she'll put a paper cup right in front of my cup, pour it into the paper cup, and then I'll pick up the paper cup, which is next to my cup, and pour it into my cup, and then put it in the garbage can. And it's like, if you can safely make it, and I understand the businesses need to cover themselves, obviously, and liability is a huge thing. And the reason it is one way is something happened sometime, there was a lawsuit, and now they're doing things the way they are. And they need to be safe. And I know that it's like every sign exists for a reason. No matter how ridiculous the sign, something happened, and there's a reason why the sign's there. But like you said, there needs to be a way for policy to focus on, safely being able to use reusable things as a main source. Like, there's like a lot of the food-based services where they do pre-meal planning and stuff, but then you'll get like everything in individually little wrapped, like the salt and pepper is in their own little containers, and then absolutely everything's in single-use plastic containers. It's like there's a way to effectively sanitize reusable containers. Like, those companies could be a lot more environmentally friendly, but there is liability on their end, of course, and there's the public health concern as well. It's just like you said, it is a balance, and like that's it. It's a complicated subject, and that's why policy really needs to get looked at. But it's a lot easier, a lot more time effective for companies to just be like, oh, we'll just single use it. Now there's no way nothing can happen. We don't need to think about it. And then there you go. And it's like, oh, if we just thought for a little bit, or just like really like took a step back and look at this, it would be a lot easier.
Yeah, it's changing behavior in a way. There's a question in chat. In your cleanup journey, have you had to deal with very much drug paraphernalia? And actually, I was just going to talk about this. Yes. Absolutely. Most days I find drug paraphernalia on the streets of Victoria. Some of it, if you don't know what you're looking at, you probably wouldn't notice it as drug paraphernalia. But we do have an opioid epidemic happening, a poison drug supply, addicts that aren't getting enough support. And so we can't have high expectations for those members of our society. They are struggling with addiction. It has taken over their lives. We can't expect them to throw their stuff away properly or safely. So we have to help take care of them and make our streets safe, right? So yeah, I find needles, and with those, I don't come across them a lot, but sometimes I find one, or sometimes I find a pile of them. And Victoria is really great. There are two kind of organizations that are really taking care of like needles on the streets, and that's Solid Outreach Society. They come pick them up. Also, the City of Victoria Public Works Department. They have somebody on call 24/7, and if you call their office after hours, you get patched through to the fire department non-emergency line, and they will dispatch a crew to remove the needle. And they're actually, when you call Public Works, I was told that they are keeping a map of where the needles are found, and then they add that if they notice trends like, oh, this seems to be a new hotspot, then they will proactively go to that area on their rounds and make sure that it's cleaned up. There's alcohol prep pads. You'll find those a lot. They're kind of safer drug kits that are distributed. So you'll find all the components of those. They're like little vitamin C packets. They're little aluminum cups and kind of blue elastic bands kind of things. Like those are all the intravenous drug stuff. But then there are also glass pipes that I find. There's, one of the things that I find a lot of, which is kind of frustrating, is marijuana packaging. And that stuff is indestructible. It's like the thickest layer of plastic. And it's just like, okay, you have a little bit of marijuana and we got to encase it in this gigantic package of plastic that is really difficult to open. And I understand that they, don't want kids being able to open that, but it's such a waste.
If I could interject, yeah. I've been finding a lot of ones that are like, let's say it'll be this big, but if you look in the bottom of the hole, the plastic bottom comes about 3/4 of the way up. So there's only actually container fills to here, but the whole container's this big to make it look bigger when they go to sell it to you. So like you'll have an entire plastic container this large, but it only holds this much stuff in it. So it's like, why didn't you just make it this tall? Or like, for instance, like I'll find like a lot of like the 10 joint packages, and you're like, oh, well, at least it's cardboard. And then you open it up, the whole inside's plastic lined, and there's little plastic cutouts all the way through it for each doobie. And it's just like, and you're like, man, there's got to be a better way to package this. And like I've even noticed too, like especially since there's been a lot more regulation and public health things around it, the packaging has significantly increased. And it hurts though, because you think if somebody's like sitting in a nature park and then they get stoned, they'd appreciate the area around them a little bit more right as they're leaving, but you still find it everywhere, right?
Yeah, well, and just because a company decides to throw a recycling symbol on something doesn't actually mean that it's recyclable in the system in your area. And even then, if it is recycled, there's no guarantee that it actually will get recycled. If it's mixed in with somebody has put plastic recycling that's coated in peanut butter or something and like just dirty and like that might get dumped out. So it's not a perfect system.
Can't we only do number 1, 2,
Dinah has a
5?
question next. Just putting it in there. Thanks, Dinah. When this.
Thanks. I was just trying to type it. I wanted to know what you do with your trash when you bring
Hmm.
those many liters home. Do you recycle them and have to go through it and separate it? Like, how do you manage all that?
So I use most of it is not recyclable. It's just dirty and a lot of single-use plastic, cups and the cigarette butts and all of that. And the dog poop bags, I find those quite a bit. So I use my gloves and I open up the city trash cans, just pop the top off, and I dump my bucket into the city trash cans that are around Victoria. Some of this stuff, there are some like apartment recycling bins along the way where I walk. And when I do find clean recyclable material, I'll drop it in those. And then the cans, the aluminum cans and the bottles I leave. If they're like stuck in the bush, I'll pull them out and put them on the sidewalk, because there are quite a few people in Victoria that roam the streets looking for empty cans. That's their source of income. So I leave those for the people that are at need.
Yeah, that was the one part I want to interject. Like, even when we did our cleanups, because we did the Cowichan Bay estuary, we got 1,200 pounds out of the Cowichan Bay estuary. We got 913 pounds out of Averill Creek
Wow.
Park. And even at the end of that,
Well
so
done.
1,200 pounds, we still only had a bag, maybe this big, of stuff that actually was clean enough to be able to recycle, or actually was good enough. Because like, even if you find a can, that can's been there for a few years. It's been walked on, it's been stepped on, it's been half buried, it's been flipped over, it's fell down a bank, cars have
Mhm.
run it over, things like that. It's like, even if you try, you're like, I'd need to pressure wash all of this to do it. And then you're like, well, then what's the water cost of doing that to try and send something to the recycling plant
Yeah.
that might even still get sent back? Do you know, I heard a thing that we only do numbers 1, 2, and 5. That's the only ones we have the capacity to actually recycle. And then like 3, 4, 6, 7, and 9 aren't, or 8 and 9
Yeah.
aren't. Awesome.
Yeah, I believe that's the case. Number 6, I believe, polystyrene is recyclable, but I don't believe the blue bins take it.
Yeah, okay.
There
that's what
is a company, a recycling company out in Souk, I believe, that do mobile plastic recycling depots where you have to pay them to get rid of your recycling. They take pretty much everything. Number 7 plastic is kind of a myth. It's the grab bag. It could be anything. Like it's like everything else. It's miscellaneous. So if you can't, like, if you take this number 7 and this number 7, they might be 2 different kinds of plastic actually, or made of different things. So yeah, they're not really that recyclable. The other numbers are pretty recyclable. The number 4, the bags, those can usually be recycled at grocery stores, or like London Drugs, I believe, takes that kind of thing. So, but yeah, you'll have to check with your local municipality on what you can actually put in your bin.
Because I heard a lot of like people were saying they were getting like 3s and 6s and 7s turned down. Because I remember I actually got a tour one time, and it made me realize how difficult recycling actually is. I got a tour of the Scotty Plastics plant, and they make downriggers and marine parts, and they had a wall of over 1,000 different 6x6 foot bins of plastic pellets. And I was like, why do you have so many of these bins out? And he says each one of those bins cannot be melted with the other. So, and that's just to make plastic of different hardness, different sturdiness, different thickness, different color. He's like, so each one of those can't be melted together. And I was like, so what about the melting process behindhand when the recycling? He's like, it's the exact same. That's why it's so much stuff gets turned down, and it blew my mind. I'm just looking, I was like, and all you guys do is make hard plastic black things that are meant to last a long time. And that's how many different polymers they had to use to be able to, still create stuff. And it's
it's wild. Yeah, those are called nurdles. And I've done some work with Surfrider Foundation on studying the impact of plastic pellets on our environment. And you can look up some, I'll actually put it in the chat. We did a short documentary on plastic pellets in the Fraser River,
Thank you, David.
which we
And
called
I
Solidified
just
Oil
see-
Spill.
I see Dinah's hand up again, so I'm just going to flag that.
You guys are chatty like crazy. What you had asked the question of what we see here, right? That was what you had asked us. And I just want to mention, I think we here know that one of our biggest problems is people just dumping a whole truckload of their garbage up a side road. It happens here a lot. And we just went to the dump yesterday, my husband and I, and we're kind of shocked at how much it cost us just to get rid of some treated wood that we couldn't deal with. We couldn't figure out how else to deal with it. And I just feel like somehow that whole system is working against us. The cost of dumping forces these people to dump up, their drywall and their construction materials. And there is so much building going on right now that I think it's increases. And then the other thing is that when you go to Fisher Road, which is our local spot, you can't take recycling in there unless you're paying for some garbage, or they'll make you pay to recycle. And I don't know if you.
Oh, yeah. I recycled, but I had to convince them in my little sedan. That's all I had, right?
Yeah, that's not right.
But
that's not right, Dinah.
I know, but they told us that very clearly yesterday. Like, luckily we were paying, so we went around 3 times and got our recycling in at the end. But they are clearly saying that, and they told me this a couple of years ago, and so I was like, okay, so you're still following that rule, and otherwise, what? You got to go to Bing Creek.
What were you trying to recycle?
Well, we had some metal, we had some glass jars, batteries, electrical stuff, appliances, that kind of thing.
There should not be a fee for that. So I'll let solid waste know that that's happening, because I've never had that happen to me, but that shouldn't happen.
I think they just want to they think when they're busy. I think if you get there when they're not busy, they might let you in, but
yeah,
they get paid by the CBRD to do that service.
She clearly told us that's their policy. So yes.
Yeah.
Solid waste people. I know.
On a positive note, though, Spencer has authorized up to 1 ton of material that we collect during our litter drive that he will accept no charge as part of their community service. So we just have to wait and see with the COVID regulations whether or not we can do a bin drop at the Legion like we'd planned to do last spring. So that's still in the works, whether or not that can be done. But we've got Ben here standing by to collect it all, and he'll be registered with Fisher Road. Spencer has offered to set up something with Ben so that anytime he's supporting our litter picks, that his truck will be allowed in. So I think it's absolutely awesome.
Yeah, it's great. Every barrier should be removed, right? So
yeah,
that's the way I look at it. We have to encourage. A lot of people won't recycle; they just throw it all in the garbage. So every barrier to make sure people do recycle, I think, should be removed.
Ed, did you want to say?
I just wanted to confirm that I have used Fisher Road for many years now, and with all kinds of things, and I've never had to pay anything there. It's tough to get in there when it's busy, and it's not that pleasant, but it's a free service to the residents of the CBRD, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, here in Victoria, we have the Heartland landfill, and they have a nice setup for recycling, and yeah, they don't charge. You can go in and recycle a lot of things, and it's great. It's, old paint and batteries and the electronics. And,
yeah, I was going to say
all of
Heartland's really good for that, especially because my biggest concern is finding drywall and stuff, and like that's one of the biggest difficult parts that I found in my research and studies. Like, I've talked to the Ministry of Transportation, the Ministry of Environment and stuff. I'm like, what if I find unmarked containers of some sort of liquid? What if I find, a bunch of like old concrete bags? What if I find a bunch of old drywall? And they're like, well, we'll need to know the address of where it came from. And I'm like, well, if I'm, 20 kilometers up a logging road in the bush, how am I going to know where that is? And they're like, oh, well, nobody's really asked anything about, cleaning up this in like an official capacity before. And I was like, so what do I do? Do I just leave it? I was like, what do I do? And they're like, oh, we'll call the hazmat team if it's a dangerous substance. And I'm like, you're going to send a hazmat team 20 kilometers up a logging road to, a geo coordinate? Like, I'm like, I don't know. And that's the tough part, because it's like, again, like you guys were saying, that there's barriers to throwing out waste. Well, I was calling, the local environment, like the asbestos testing centers and stuff. And I was like, so what if I find a bunch of bags of drywall? They're like, well, it's $35 a bag to get it tested. And so you'd need to test every bag. So I'm like, so if I find 10 bags of drywall, I have to pay you guys $350 to find out if I can throw it out or not. And then I have to go get rid of the waste of it. And then it's like, I can start to see why people opt forward to just go and toss it, which is really sad, because then anybody who decides to clean that up has a huge responsibility on their hands all of a sudden.
The province encourages people to call the report a poacher and polluter line. So that is one place you could call. It's the RAP line. You can submit an online form, or you can call the number. In that case, I would call the province and say, look, you got to deal with this. But then you enter the weird kind of twilight zone space of interjurisdiction, not my jurisdiction game. So it's like with the abandoned boats. It's like, okay, will somebody clean this boat? It's like, well, it's on the beach, so it's the municipality. And the municipality's like, well, it's half in the water, so it's the federal government. The federal government's like, well, actually, no, it's not touching the bottom, so it's touching the bottom, so it's the province. And you're like, well, please, it's breaking apart. Somebody clean this thing up. The Dead Boats Disposal Society is a great organization to support and to report dead boats to. John Rowe, who runs that, does a fantastic job, and they're cataloging boats all around Vancouver Island, and they are getting the federal funds to actually remove them and cut through the red tape to get stuff done. So there are groups that are, taking care of things, but like, yeah, with that bags of drywall situation, you're like, I just want it cleaned up, and like, the province might push it onto the logging road company. It's their responsibility. But then it also shows that the system's broken, because like, maybe we should have a free or very cheap way to get rid of drywall so that it doesn't end up in our environment, creating more problems. Like, that's a serious health hazard, especially if it has asbestos in it.
Well, that's the one thing I do have to say to the Heartland landfills is it's only $110 a ton to get rid of drywall there. But the obstacle before that is you have to get every single bag tested if it's pre-1990 or if you don't know. So it was nice to see that, like, Heartland's even doing like their ability. Like, pretty sure normal tonnage was like $127 for household garbage, and it was actually cheaper to do drywall. But there's still that barrier of having to get things tested and having to report stuff and go to special places and have your permit and let them know ahead of time before you come in when you're dumping it. And everything's in double lined bags, airtight, sealed, asbestos written all over it. And so yeah, you're right. There is some need for action there, but you're right. It's the twilight zone. It's not my responsibility,
If I could bring us back to that sort of boots on ground individual empowerment note that we'd love to end on, in terms of like, what can we do and what strategies and what tools are available to us. So David, could you inspire us with some of the suppliers and strategies that you've come up with?
So use whatever you're comfortable with. I mean, I know some people use like barbecue tongs or just gloves. I like to use a litter picker that looks like this. This is very well constructed. I got this from Qualichem Industrial Products. I'll put it in the chat. I like this because it has a trigger. Here, I'm just going to show you. I have another. This is one of my first litter pickers that I picked up at Home Depot. This kind of litter picker, when you use it, see my wrist is bending. When you go out and litter pick for 2 hours, you really start to hurt your wrist. And so I found that the trigger kind is a little bit more comfortable because it's not bending my wrist as much. You can order these in packets of 6. They're about $30 each from Qualicam, including shipping. They send it via courier. Also, I showed you my bucket. I like to use a metal bucket. You can get these at Canadian Tire. They're about $10 or so. And, you know, reduce the amount of plastic that we're using. I mean, you could use a plastic bucket, that's fine. I prefer the metal one. It does get a little bit rusty, but that's okay. I like to decorate mine with stickers. And anybody that wants one of these, actually, I might send some of these to Kimberly. I made these stickers. They're litter pickers keeping it clean. I had these designed, and I passed them out to people who are cleaning up in their communities. They can put them on their litter pick bucket or their mug or, you know, laptop, whatever. So yeah, I like that with the mountain and the trees and the water. We all keep it clean. And then obviously a pair of gloves are important, especially with some of the gross stuff that we find out there. I went on a walk down to Mystic Beach recently, or the Soup, and brought my litter picker and bucket all the way down to the beach and picked up 10 dog poop bags. And when I was down there, and also I found several empty bags. And there was somebody with a dog down on the beach, and they said, do you have an empty dog poop bag? And I was like, well, actually, yes, I do. And I gave it to them, and then they were like, is there like a trash can like down here at the beach? And I'm like, well, no, pack it in, pack it out, buddy. Like, and I was like, you know what, I'll take it. Like, I have like 9 of them here. Like, what's an extra one? I'll bring it for you. But yeah, you don't really need much. You can use a bag. You can do it very inexpensively. You could do it expensively. And here, I'll show you some of the options for litter pickers, especially for some of the more extreme. So here's the Qualcomm page. You can get 96-inch litter pickers that fold out so that you can get stuff really far into the bush or down trails where, you know, it's too treacherous to go down on foot. But the most standard one is the 32-inch. That's the one that I have. But yeah, if you're on the mainland, I believe you can pick these up at Qualcomm. So yeah, there are lots of options. It's been neat. I just want to spend a moment to acknowledge that, like, this is not a unique thing to do. I'm certainly not the first person to litter pick in my neighborhood. There are lots of people that have been doing it, and there are people around the world who are doing even more impressive litter pick projects than me. There's a guy named Edgar McGregor who's in California who has been litter picking now for 600 days straight in his park, and he's just a couple months ago he announced that he has removed every piece of litter from his park. There's like nothing left to pick up. And he's done some extreme litter picks where there's like forest fires coming over the mountains and high winds and rain, and it's just really extreme. And he's being recognized internationally. He's a wonderful young man. And there are groups in the UK that I follow who are organizing community cleanups with kids, and just getting the message out there. That, you know, this is a good thing to do, and also quantifying the amount of trash that's out there, because I think a lot of us don't see it, even when it is, even when there is a lot of litter. You know, my challenge is just start on your own street or where you live, and then branch out from there, or go to your favorite trail or beach or park, and talk to people, and then examine your own habits. Like, do you really need to use a single-use coffee cup? Do you need that takeout container? Do you need that straw. Like you can start to change some of that behavior. And you can change the behavior of others. I'm sure many of you know smokers in your life, and you can talk to them. Or one thing that I did by the apartment complex near us is I took a tin can, poked holes in the bottom of it with a nail, filled it half with sand, had my daughter design a label that says cigarette butts here, please. And there used to be tons of cigarette butts on the ground, and we put it kind of near a tree in that area. And now they're putting them in the can. And I go around, every month or so and empty the can, and it's fine. Those are not on the street anymore. So you can influence by cleaning up and setting a good example. You can influence the behavior of those around you. And I'm really excited to see where your challenges go. And I'm really happy to help support your challenge of picking up litter in the Shawnigan Lake area.
Thank you so much, David. I just want all of us to just please give a warm round of applause in whatever way you like, if you want to choose it as a reaction, because this recording will be posted on our YouTube channel, and we'll be sharing it with the other Rotary clubs in our area. And hopefully this message will go far and wide. And so we really appreciate the words and the questions that were addressed today. And of course, it's a huge complex problem, and we're just barely chipping away at it. But if we each can do our part, that will make a difference. And you can follow David's adventures if you have a Twitter account. He's at Librarial Study. And you can also find him in the media as he's finishing up his own personal challenge to cover every street in Fernwood. So thank you so much, David. And with our last few minutes, if anyone would like to follow along in fine Rotary tradition and share a happy or a sad, this is our way of supporting and connecting with one another. Normally we would pay it into the club coffers as a happy or sad buck, but I invite you to pay it forward today. Pay it forward in your community. Buy something local. Support a local business in your own way. And so would anyone like to share a happy or a sad?
Well, go ahead, Ben.
Okay, I had a happy. I actually bumped into the guy that goes around Shawnigan Lake and picks up all the beer cans. I saw him driving, and I stopped by and I threw on a mask, and I didn't have anything new with me, but I walked up and I gave him a hoodie, and I was like, here's a relaxed hoodie. I was like, we do cleanups around here. I'm just happy that somebody's out here doing something. He's like, well, I only pick up beer cans. And I was like, yeah, but you're still picking up something off the side of the road. And I was like, you're doing something more than, you're doing something that most people complain about, but don't actually do something about. So I was like, I respect that. I was like, here's an old beat up hoodie. I was like, it's freshly washed. And he's like, I don't want something new anyways. And it was just a really heartwarming moment, because I gave him the hoodie and I was like, wear this if you're cold or something. And I was like, if I see you, I'm like, I'll throw you a toque for when it's wintertime. I'm like, whatever you need, just let me know. And his name's William, and I got to meet him, and he's just this guy who bikes around Shawnigan picking up beer cans, and that's it. That's all he does. And it was a heartwarming moment, because I was just driving. I was like, oh no, I got to say hi to this guy. I see him all the time. And I finally got to connect with him, and it was a cool little nice kind of heartwarming experience I had. So that's my happy for the week.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Sierra.
Yeah, Kim, I'd just like to acknowledge you. I think this is, you haven't you've kept just the local event going every year, and now it's become a community tradition almost. So people are expecting it and looking forward to it. And so that kind of community that you've created, and hearing the story about, I think David shared about the guy whose goal was to clean up all the litter in one park. And I think that is really a great, inspiring story, where just create, your influence, Kim, of allowing people to have a success story of their own, of just picking up litter for 1 hour, say they get that addictive feeling of, I've made a difference in my community, and they can keep doing it. And they don't necessarily, and it's a perfect activity for people who don't need recognition or acknowledgement. Everybody kind of gets their good feelings in different ways. They need, either they need to be compensated in some way, or they just need to tell someone, or they need to be acknowledged. So I think it's a great activity for people who just want to feel like they've done something and they don't need to be acknowledged. And so it's just and also the idea of continuing that story of creating a good example. And so that's really important, because we see the opposite. I've seen the opposite. I've been walking and I saw this grandma throw like garbage out her car window with a kid in the front seat. And, you know, that's the opposite of what we want. So just creating a lot of the positive, it creates that example that everybody needs. And I think you're doing a really great job, and the community really appreciates it. And now it's a tradition. So let us know how we can help, but it's certainly a tradition.
I've offered to amplify the stories of the other people in our valley who are doing this. And so I'm writing up notes at all the meetings of the coalition of cleanup groups. And the one major one we've decided to land on is a Facebook page called the EcoAction Cleanup Effort. And through them, they've created an internal movement within a very unique community within our borders, the Cowichan Tribes community. And they've actually created a contest within the tribes. So the families are getting bins dropped off at their houses, and they're going for the best yard ever. And there's prizes. And this has been something that's been happening in the last couple of weeks, I would say. And there's just this huge upswelling of pride in the community, of care of the earth. And that is actually the April teaching of the Cowichan Tribes, is care of the earth. And I was taught how to say it, but I can't say it very well, so I won't attempt it here. But the point is that it has to come from within. We can't sort of impose our values on other people, but if we can show a good example and the people feel empowered, that's where real true change happens. And I think that it's genuine change that happens that way. And so I was inspired and humbled by the work they're doing, and the dialogue that's happening across committees, across areas, across districts. And I just want to help facilitate that. So yeah, I'm the source of the notes for all of that stuff. So hopefully that wisdom and that experience will get shared. That's my happy. That was pretty exciting to see that contest go up.
Well, you know, there is a common psychology term called broken windows theory relating to crime. And if the window's broken, it's more likely that more windows are going to get broken. And it's like the same thing. If there's more litter, it's more likely people are going to litter. But if a place stays pristine and people see that it's pristine, they're going to be more motivated to keep a place pristine. And I think that's a very important thing to kind of carry through is like, if there's a less chance somebody's going to litter if it's absolutely perfect. But if like, oh, there's already garbage here, they just wrote off any guilt that they could feel in their head, right? So I think that's a very important thing to carry forward and continue on.
And Crystal, you had a happy or a sad?
Yeah, I just want to echo Sierra, and that I just think that you're super inspiring, as well as David and Ben, everything that you're doing. And I just think that it's wonderful. It was great to be here this morning and hear everybody's inspiring stories. And yeah, it's my happy.
Well, it's 9:01, and in the kindness of giving you the rest of your day to go and make a positive difference in the world, I will bid you adieu, and hopefully we'll see you again in 2 weeks' time. Tell your friends that the EcoClub is here on Zoom, here Saturday morning, starting off right, hopefully. Thanks so much, everyone.
Nice. Thank you so much. It's great to meet you all.
Thank you. And I'll stay on the line just to wrap up the recording. Thank you.
David, if you ever want to relax, buddy, let me know and I'll come drop one off. I work in Victoria.
Okay.
Yeah.